Hey, Steve,
What?
when does Friday come before Thursday?
I don't know when.
In the dictionary.
Oh, man. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Engage, a family gaming podcast. And I'm your host, Stephen Duetzmann, as always. This is the official video game and board game podcast for EngageFamilyGaming.com. EFG is a website where parents like myself and my co-hosts come together to give parents and families the information they need to get their family game on. This week, it's 3 people on the team. I am joined by my usual crew of board game folks. First, my board game editor, Linda Wrobel. How are you?
I'm great. Hello, everyone.
And the man who runs Upon Perspective, that is Rob Kalajian. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
You've been writing about board games for way too damn long.
Yes.
Almost
Almost 10 years now.
Almost 10 years. That's a lot of board game reviews. So we're bringing your experience to the table, because specifically, as you guessed, folks, we're not here to talk about World of Warcraft. That'll probably be next week. This week, we're talking about board games. Specifically, we're going to talk about Gen Con. Gen Con is the E3 of board games. Is that safe to say, Rob?
Yeah, although I think PAX Unplugged may overshadow that over time.
Eventually, yes, I agree. But right now, Gen Con is the E3 of board games, and it just happened. In fact, we are recording this on a Tuesday, and it just ended on Sunday afternoon. Tons of interesting announcements. There are companies that have panels and press conferences there. Not quite on the level as the stuff that Sony and all them do, but it'll get there, I'm sure. And so we wanted to go through some of our favorite announcements, some things that we were excited about, maybe some things we weren't excited about. But before we do that, I do want to take a moment to thank you folks for listening. We do hope that the games you've been playing have been great. I can say we have been playing some awesome stuff. So we want to make sure that our podcast is more interactive. So at any time, please feel free to reach out to us on social media. The best way is to message us on our Facebook page that you can get to at EngageFamilyGaming.com/Facebook and give us your comments, questions, feedback, or topic suggestions. So now that we've done the rigmarole, let's go around the horn. Linda, you said you've been playing all stuff that we have already talked about, although you have played a lot of games. If you look at her Instagram, which is username, what is it, DragonRose720?
Yes.
So if you go to DragonRose720 on Instagram, which everyone should, by the way, because she posts a lot of our board game content there, you brought a giant stack of board games with you to your seasonal campsite this past weekend. How many of those games actually saw play?
I think we had 5 maybe get to the literally to the picnic table. So that was really fun to see how many games came out in the woods.
Yeah. I mean, that picnic table that you have is really good for board games, unless there's thundering and lightning. But hey, what are you going to do?
Or high winds.
Or high winds kind of defeated the purpose. So, but Rob and I, well, first off, Rob is always busy. He plays board games, I think, while he's asleep.
I do.
It's a little weird, but whatever. That's his superpower. But the biggest thing you've been doing, Rob, as I've been following you on Facebook, etc., is that your family has decided to take up a Dungeons and Dragons habit.
Yes.
So,
I finally convinced them.
Yeah. So this is a 2-part thing. First, I want to know how you convinced your whole family, which is quite large, to play in a single Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
Well,
follow up, I want to know how you convinced your wife to do it. And then I want to know how it went. So, in what order?
Well, first of all, the whole family isn't. We've left the 4-year-old out of D&D, but it's something I've been wanting to do for a while. I mean, I haven't played D&D in 20 years. I mean, the last time I played was AD&D 2nd edition. I tried 3rd edition when it came out and absolutely hated it. So went back to playing AD&D 2nd, but I've always wanted to get back into it, and Wizards had sent me a bunch of books a while ago, and I'm like, oh, I got to play with the kids. And I finally picked up and started reading the Tales from the Yawning Portal, which I believe is seven classic modules brought into 5th edition.
Yep.
And I'm like, all right, I'm going to run these, because I used to GM for like Vampire and Shadowrun. I've actually never DM'd Dungeons & Dragons. So I'm like, I'm going to run these from the book. And it says, it's for characters, starting with level 1, preferably four players. I'm like, oh, I got the 3 kids. And I had asked my wife to play, and at first she was kind of hesitant. I'm like, we just need a 4th, so you just need to kind of like just sit there and help out. But she started reading the player's handbook and got really into making the characters. And then the kids got really into making their characters, and we made it a family thing. And we started the first campaign, which was the Sunless Citadel, on Tuesday, and we actually made a thing where like I went out and I bought everybody brand new dice, so they could all have like fresh dice for their first ever D&D campaign. I broke out my wooden DM screen, the dice tower, some dice trays. I went D&D shopping at Walmart, and I got binders and page sleeves and paper and mechanical pencils and brand new erasers. So like we were all like D&D'd up. We were like total nerd headquarters at the dining room table. I brought special snacks. And so we started Tuesday night, and that first campaign, or that first session, it went pretty smooth. I mean, the kids, it was late because we waited for our 4-year-old to go to bed. And they get kind of silly, but they got the hang of rolling the d20, how to figure out hits, how to figure out damage, how to go about exploring a dungeon and searching for traps and dealing with NPCs. We played for like 3 hours that night,
Awesome.
And the next day they were all just like, "Are we playing D&D again today?" Like, sure. So we played 3 hours again, and 3 hours the next night, and then the night after that, the 4th night, we were almost done with the Sunless Citadel module. So I'm like, all right, we're just going to play through. And so that was like a 4-hour session. And it was really cool. They made it to level 3, so they each got to level up their characters, and some of them added some spells. So like my wife is a half-elf druid, and my daughter is a drow sorcerer. My 8-year-old is a gnome fighter, and my almost 13-year-old is a half-orc paladin. So they all got to level up and discover what their characters are good at. We ended up, as we went on, tweaking things. So we printed out some note sheets so they knew what all of their special abilities were, because they would not think to use these things because they're not staring them right in the face. And then we had kind of an interim session, and we started the next module, and they've been begging me to play again. It's just I've been busy, so we're recording tonight. I'm recording my podcast tomorrow, so Thursday night we'll get back into D&D. But I've also I went out to Etsy, and I messaged like almost 40 different people who make different accessories, like character tokens, dice towers, more GM screens. I'm like, hey, if you want to send me something to review, I'm going to use it in this campaign with my kids. I'll review it. It'll be awesome. And I got a bunch of really cool stuff coming in.
Awesome. So it sounds like this is just going to be like the new thing for you guys for a while.
Yeah. I think like my wife said it. This summer is going to be the summer of D&D. Like that's what my kids are gonna remember.
Awesome. I can think of, for a lot of kids, this summer is going to be the summer of Fortnite. So I think the idea that your kids are going to have a different experience, playing D&D with you and your wife, I think that's I am jealous of that experience. With that said, I'm not very far away from doing that ourselves. It's just a matter of getting the time together and all that stuff. So I am jealous, but only because I haven't done it yet. It's just a matter of time. We started, but we included the infinite co-host, and now that he lives up in Vermont, we have to, we got to rearrange things, because that's hard, because that's far. So that's D&D. So obviously, those listening, and Linda, you played Dungeons and Dragons before. Linda has played with me. I was her dungeon master. I like to think I'm okay.
That was a very long time ago.
I like to think I'm okay. Actually, you know what? I wasn't the dungeon master. I was for part of it, but Caleb was for the other part. I forget who did most of it. Hold on, let me ask Jenna. Jenna, did I dungeon master the whole time? Who did it? It was Caleb, right? It was Caleb that did it. In that weird thing. And I did it for a little while, but then it kind of fell apart because we had too much time and also we were too busy LARPing. That obviously made things complicated.
And we all started having children.
And then we started having children. But now my plan, and I told Linda, I told John this, I don't know if he told you, but my plan is to, once all of our kids are old enough, to just send everyone else away, and I'm just going to play Dungeons & Dragons with the kids. I'm just going to take all of them at once. That's my plan. I'm going to do it at least once.
That is a lofty goal.
I mean, listen, Benadryl is a thing.
It is.
So anyway, that's my plan. I'm going to do it at least once for like a whole weekend. Just binge playing Dungeons and Dragons with all of our children. And I think that'll be a whole lot of fun. So now I played a lot of Pioneer Days over these last couple of days, and I want to talk about that. Pioneer Days is a game from Tasty Minstrel. It is, all things considered, a pretty heavy dice drafting game. It is essentially Oregon Trail because you're in a caravan traveling over a series of days, which turn into weeks. I really dig it. I say that a lot, but this time I really like it. I actually we played a whole bunch of different ways, including one-on-one, me versus my wife. As one would expect, she beat me up real bad. And I lost by quite a bit. She didn't literally beat me up, but she beat me quite badly at the game. One of the things that I like about it is, at its core, it's pretty straightforward. You're putting multicolored dice into a bag. Every day, you draw a number of dice and roll them equal to 1 plus the number of players. And then each of you takes a die and does the action. And then whatever there are 4 disaster tracks, and whatever color die is left over, that's the marker moves on that disaster. And if it happens 4 times, then you have to deal with the disaster. And those things are things like a storm, which damages your wagons, or a famine, which can kill your cattle, or a disease, which could kill your people, or a raid, which takes your money. And I really found a lot of really interesting decisions in balancing what you need versus staving off these disasters that really all are going to happen. Like, there's really no way to avoid them. But, holding them off and dealing with the consequences of those actions. And over time, you're kind of gaining resources. And every week, which is completed by, doing 5 days, you get to a new town, and you basically have quests that you complete to earn favors. That everything funnels into victory points. It seems like it's a super heavy game, especially if you look at our Instagram, you'll see the number of pieces and stuff that's all over the place. Once you get going, and Rob, I'm sure you've played games like this that look like they're a giant mess, but once you take 2 turns, it's just like, oh, this is just a thing. I really, really enjoy Pioneer Days. It was available at Gen Con. That's one of the reasons why they sent it out to us. So this is going to be available. I definitely recommend it for folks. It is not the lightest game. It might intimidate some non-gamers, but if you've got people that you play with that are relatively game savvy, this will hit the table and will play very nicely. I especially like that there's a little bit of take this in there, because you can by choosing dice, you can choose hazards and disasters to take place that really mess with your opponents, which I didn't really see. Like, it feels like you almost want to play it semi-cooperatively to try and prevent things, but when you choose not to and you end up being a traitor, man, it's great. That's a great feeling. So, have you seen anything about this one, Rob?
I actually haven't, surprisingly.
You haven't? Okay. Well, you'll see a fair amount of it because we're going to be reviewing it within the next couple of weeks. It's really good. It's 14 plus, but I think it's accessible to younger gamers that are savvier. What I do like is there's an advanced play option as well, where you can play as either generic pioneers or they're actually named characters that have like superpowers and different starting equipment, etc. And also the townspeople that you can recruit to like join your caravan. There are basic versions, and then there are more advanced ones that have very different mechanics that you can include as well. So you really do get to pick your poison as you play through the game, or when you start the game. Like, do you want the very basic, easy to teach version, or do you want like deeper strategy, etc. So I really dig it. It's available or should be available very soon. Let's look on the Amazons and see if it's around. Bear with me. It is available on the Amazon for $48. And you know what? I think it's worth it. I mean, it is pricey compared to some other games, largely because there's a lot of little pieces. There's lots of little bits to it. But it is, it's definitely worth the price on that. So, Rob, I saw you reviewed a Sailor Moon dice game.
Yes.
Now, Sailor Moon is not, like, you're not the target audience for Sailor Moon. How'd you end up with this?
I am not. I was contacted, like, months ago by Cheap Ass Games to about their new dice, Button Men.
Yep.
And they had mentioned something about another company putting out a Sailor Moon themed version of Button Men, and if I wanted to be, if I wanted them to reach out for me and get on the list for that. And a few months went by, and all of a sudden, the full title is Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon Crystal Dice Challenge.
Yep.
Which is kind of a mouthful, but it showed up in the mail, and it's basically just a Sailor Moon themed Button Men. You get, I think something like 32 characters, a bunch of polyhedral dice, and some tokens. And they also toss in 2 lanyards and these badge holders, so you can wear them at a con to say, "Hey, I'm ready for a Sailor Moon battle." But
are you gonna do that?
No, absolutely not. And the whole game comes in this box that's just way too big for what you actually get. But yeah, it's pretty much straight up Button Men. You each take a character. You can either do it at random or pick which characters you want. And you get an active dice pool and a reserve dice pool, and sometimes a token for a special power. You each roll your active pool, and you take turns trying to capture the other person's dice by using numbers on your dice that are equal or higher. And then if you win, you get a token. If you lose, you can pull a die from your pool in your reserve to your active pool, so you have more to roll. And it's best 3 out of 5. It's really quick. It's meant for 2 players, but I think it can go up to something like 6 or 8 if you do team play or round robin rules. But at its core, it's a 2-player game. It's like 5 to 10 minutes. It's super light, but the special powers and the ability to use your reserve dice add a little bit of depth. There's certain characters that rely on their reserve dice and they can pull them in. There's certain characters that can clone the die of an opponent or steal an opponent's reserve die. It's fast, and it's great because it's something the kids can take out and just play. Yeah. It takes no time to set up. It takes 5 to 10 minutes to play. Dad, you want to play a quick game of Sailor Moon? Sure. I play a quick game, and then another one of them hops in, and they're happy. And the cool part is it's completely compatible with both the new Button Men release and the actual old Button Men, which had the actual buttons. And I actually believe there's 4 promo buttons for Sailor Moon, kind of like the old style Button Men. And I think Gen Con had another one of the Sailor Scouts as a promo in card form. So yeah, it's really fun. It was kind of interesting. We went out to the movies the other day to see Hotel Transylvania 3, and there was a trailer because they're bringing 2 of the Sailor Moon movies back to the big screen. And, of course, because we've been playing the game, my kids are like, oh, Sailor Moon, and they're all interested now in going to see it's like Sailor Moon R and Sailor Moon S or something.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
We have it, too, and the plan is, it's in the list. So Linda's just, we have to have a game day so we can play all these games. But we knew that already. That'll all get easier when it's not summer. Summer is like really, like for a lot of folks, like summer gets like easy because there's like more free time. But man, like for people that are supposed to quote unquote have more free time, we have way less.
It does go fast and it fills up.
Yeah, it fills up so quickly. And so I'll take. I think I'm just for sake of things. The last game I want to mention is I played Dinosaur Tea Party from Restoration Games. Guys, I'm just gonna say it. It's real. It's not real stupid. It's real silly sounding, right? Like dinosaurs at like this fancy tea party. But outside of the fact that I am terrible at it, because we played 4 games and everyone won a game but me. And that's just because I'm bad at deduction games, because I just can't keep track of the facts. There's just too much going on. But not to make excuses, I'm also bad at games. We have a whole hashtag about it. We're gonna make t-shirts. So, but essentially, there are 20 dinosaurs that are going to this tea party. Everyone is randomly assigned a dinosaur, blind, and we go around, and you go around the circle asking questions about the dinosaurs at the party. So I would say, Linda, are you eating? And if her dinosaur happened to be eating, she would say yes or no. And if she said yes, she would put out a little tea bag that has food on it, and she would put it to the yes side. And I would say, or I would say, Rob, do you have stripes? And if he has stripes, he would do that. If it was no, then there's a no side on that tea bag. And you go around. If you get an answer that is yes, then you can take another guess. And one of the things you can do is guess their name. And if you get them and you guess a name correctly, then you get a sugar cube. The goal is to play to get 3 sugar cubes. That by itself is pretty straightforward. What adds a layer of challenge to it is, number one, you only get an extra guess if you get a yes. So you can't eliminate options and then find the correct answer. Because what a number of us found, especially in the first game, is that we were confirming the person that we wanted by asking a no question, and then the next person knew the answer and got the points. So you have to be really careful with your questions, right? Because it's hard to confirm, just the way that the dinosaurs are and how all their different, traits are. It's really hard to confirm who, one out of the 20 dinosaurs with a yes answer. So that's interesting. And the so that was a problem that we had. The other thing that makes it a little bit more complicated is every game, 3 of the dinosaurs are given quirks. And you may or may not end up playing as one of those dinosaurs. They may or may not end up being your identity, but one of them is you always say no. So no matter what they say to you, you say no. And another one is that you always lie. So there might be a dinosaur that always lies, so you can look at that. And there's another one where they always switch their answers, which means the very first question you pick yes or no, regardless of what the actual answer is. And then you do the opposite for the next time you're asked a question. So yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, or the opposite. And that really messes with people because obviously you don't know who they are. And so, it's something you have to kind of pay attention to. It does throw things into the mix. What I like about it is that is an optional thing. So if you're playing with significantly younger players, you can just avoid that entirely. But it doesn't even come into play in every game because we only had, in the multiple games we played, we actually only had one person end up drawing a dinosaur with a quirk. It's really good. It plays very young. We had our youngest playing the game. and asking questions, and she wasn't super great at it, but she was super excited to be playing Dinosaur Tea Party. My favorite part of it is the art. You can see kind of what I'm saying. Just look at our Instagram account and you'll see what I mean. All of these dinosaurs have so much personality. They're wearing funny hats and eating, drinking tea and eating cakes. And they actually have recipes in the instruction manual for tea sandwiches and like shortbread cookies. So it's fun. Restoration Games sent this to us. It's really funny now that we are, in a post-Fireball Island world, that Restoration Games, like in the same year, they're releasing Dinosaur Tea Party and Fireball Island, and announced the incoming development of the Dark Tower, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's just so interesting, these really huge, massive event games, and yeah, we're gonna make a deduction game about dinosaurs at a tea party. You know what I mean, guys?
Yeah, I'm gonna come to your house for shortbread cookies and tea cakes.
I just want to go make scones now.
Listen, the tea sandwiches are just Linda. They're those things that you guys make for every.
Are they the cucumber sandwiches?
Yeah, they're just cucumber sandwiches. That's all.
Oh my goodness!
But it's instead of the Alouette cheese, it's butter and garlic. But whatever. Yeah, they're just.
I'm still down.
Listen.
Okay, so cucumber sandwiches, scones, and dinosaur tea party. We have a date.
We should totally do. I think we should do that. Just to take videos. We should all just dress up and have a.
Well, should we all buy those? Should we all buy those inflatable T-Rex costumes?
Jeez.
That's not in my budget. Sorry.
Oh man, but you know who does? You know who has one? Andrew of the Family Gamers. And if we told him that we were having a content creation event where he had to show up in it. All right, let's put this down because we're going to need to do this. It doesn't have to be now. We can do this post-Reno, Linda. We can do this next year. Post-Reno, yeah, we're going to have to do it. We're going to have an actual dinosaur tea party. Anyway, so listen to us getting, doing our creative planning on the air because, well,
that's how we roll.
We're content creators on the internet. That's basically what we do. So that's Around the Horn. Obviously, Linda was kind of left out on this one, but she has a fair amount to say on some of these news items, even if she's going to tell me I'm excited for no reason, and that's fine. She can be the voice of sanity. So why don't we take a break first, and then we'll come back, and then we're going to talk about Gen Con. How's that sound, guys?
Sounds good.
That sounds great.
Folks, we'll see you in a minute. Welcome back, everybody, to Engage, a family gaming podcast. We're still talking about board games. I'm still Steven, last I checked. Still joined by Linda and Rob. We went around the horn, talked about some interesting games. I'm now super jealous about Dungeons & Dragons. And I may or may not have, during the break, gone and just stacked up all of my books and sent an email to Wizards so they could send me more. So let's talk about Gen Con. So first, I describe Gen Con as like the E3 of board game, like the E3 of board games. Rob, you made a really good point that right now it is, and I think Essen probably challenges it a little bit. But you made a comment, and I kind of agree with you, that PAX Unplugged is going to be competing with it, if not immediately, very soon.
Yeah, I think so. I think the only thing that might be an issue for PAX Unplugged is that it falls at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So to announce a new product, I don't think people are going to get many new things out by the holidays when they're announcing at the end of November.
Yeah.
But PAX Unplugged's first year last year was just gigantic, and it was so darn cool.
Yeah.
To quote The Cat Returns. But I can see possibly eventually PAX Unplugged growing bigger than Gen Con.
I think it's possible. The thing to keep in mind this coming year is PAX Unplugged is after Black Friday, which I think is, I think it's going to be, I think it might be I mean, if they're going to keep doing that, I think it might end up being a bigger shopping event than Gen Con, which is hard to believe considering the Gen Con hauls that I've been seeing on Facebook. But it'll be interesting to see. I know all three of us are planning on being there at PAX Unplugged this year. It's a 4-day event this time as opposed to 3. Linda and I will obviously only be there for the 2 because we're adults.
Day jobs are a thing.
Yeah, but no disrespect, Rob, if you're going to be there for all 4 days. You cannot be an adult. That's fine.
I'm going to be there for all 4 days.
Yeah, that's fine. So let's talk about Gen Con. So they made a bunch of really cool announcements. In no particular order, I'll just go through. I'm going to throw out a game, and we'll just kind of talk about what it is and what it means. So why don't we? I'm going to start with probably the most hyped announcement that they made, and that is that Restoration Games announced their newest product and their newest project, which is Return to the Dark Tower, which is going to be coming in 2020 with a Kickstarter next year. Rob, you of the three of us are the only one that has ever even seen the Dark Tower. Tell us what you can.
All right, well, so the first thing I'll mention is that this is not the Dark Tower as in Stephen King's The Dark Tower.
This is true, factually correct.
Yes, we are talking about an old board game, and I'm not too familiar with the details. I believe it was 80s. It was like this circular board, and I played it back in the day, but all I remember is it had this literal 3D Dark Tower. It was electronic.
Yeah.
And it was kind of one of those, kind of like in the vein of like the Omega Virus and stuff like that. These board games with an electronic component, and it was so cool. And it's now it's one of those games I think where people want it for the nostalgia of this. They remember playing it, similar to Fireball Island. It may not have been the best game, but it certainly was one of the coolest games that somebody either had or knew somebody that had, and it's really hard to get in good condition with a working tower. When people have giveaways for this game, everyone's entering. So to hear that Restoration Games is not only coming out with almost like a sequel or a remake, it's going to be cooperative, but also Isaac, who designed Gloomhaven, is on the design team for this game. So it's Rob and Isaac. So it's just really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? I mean, what's crazy about this is I think Restoration Games is kind of running out of home runs. You know what I mean? Like, Fireball Island was just crazy, like, nostalgia trip, but it was something that they could definitely improve, that everybody remembers fondly, even though it was garbage back then, right? Dark Tower is probably a similar situation. I'm struggling to think of too many other games that they could get the licenses for that could be improved in such a way. You know what I mean?
I think there's two that I can think of. One I keep asking them about, and they keep telling me to stop, and that's Crash Canyon, which was another one of these games that had that vacuum molded board like Fireball Island, except you had these little micro machine trucks. And as you would move, if you landed on a sloped platform, they would roll, and they had bridges, which means you could actually roll off the bridges. So that was, another roll and move game that just had a cool board. And the only other one I could think of, and the license would probably be one of the hardest to get, would be Battle Masters, which was, it had this giant 5-foot vinyl mat. And I think it was almost,
I think it was a wall, and like one side had like actual working crossbows and ballistas and stuff.
No, that was Weapons and Warriors.
Okay.
Or Crossbows and Catapults, which had like discs. This was almost like an introductory Warhammer, and I think it was a Games Workshop game or something licensed by Games Workshop. So you had these little miniatures set on plates, so they would move in squads. But the big draw to this was this 5-foot vinyl mat that you would just lay out on the floor, and you'd have to lie down and move your characters around, and it basically was, a very, very, very simplified Warhammer Fantasy.
Linda, does any of that do anything for you? Like, is Restoration Games, like, I mean, think about it, like, and maybe we're missing something super obvious, right? Like, they're smarter than us because, they just are. But barring the obvious, like, if Restoration Games all of a sudden is, at this point, just limited to these giant old, like, sword and sorcery fantasy or otherwise, like, weird games, are they just kind of out of games that you find interesting?
I don't know. It's interesting because of the games they've taken on, the only game I had heard of previously was Fireball Island. Never even played it as a child, but everything that I saw got me excited for it, which was part of the reason we did the full backing on it with the expansions. Even though I had never played it as a child, I was able to get excited about it. I'm looking at the old photo of the Dark Tower game from '81, and it's like, I don't remember this at all. And this was when I was little. And this doesn't ring a bell at all to me, but looking at it and knowing what Restoration Games has done and who's working on it of that team, I would be really interested to see where they take it. So even though I don't have the nostalgia to lean back on, seeing what they've been able to produce makes me excited looking forward on what they're going to come out with.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, Downforce, they took some different racing games, updated. Stop Thief, I had never heard of before. They re-released it. So things like that, they're not tapping into my nostalgia to the same way other people, they're tapping in for other people, but yet they're still getting me excited about these new games because they're so good. They're doing such a good job.
I mean, there's something to be said about that. Like, it might not have been your jam, but it's worth kind of looking at by nature of the fact
right.
that they do good work, and
right.
I'm with you on that. Nothing.
And they could take even obscure things. That's the thing, because they do such good work. They could take an obscure title, get the license to it, and make it. If it's got a good foundation to work from, or even a mediocre one that they can work with, they've got the potential, I think, to take even a mediocre, obscure game and make it something that would become more popular.
True. I mean, they don't necessarily, and I think, to steal the baseball analogy a little bit further, but, bad metaphors are my thing. They don't have to have everything be a home run. Between Fireball Island and Dark Tower, like, those are clear home runs. If everything else they throw out is a very strong single, that still wins their game.
Right.
So, and they're only getting better. If they release 2 games a year, one smaller one big one, they do that for 3 or 4 more years. They could just live off that. And I won't lie, I cannot wait to get because we backed Fireball Island with the expansions too. And man, I cannot wait for that. The box is huge. I don't know if you saw J.R. Honeycutt. He posted on Instagram and cross-posted it into a group. Like, they got their prototypes and like, just holding the boxes with the various expansions. This thing is going to take up a lot of space.
Boy.
I mean, there is that. So, I mean, you're going to get it right in the middle of your renovations. It'll be fine.
That's fine. It's fine.
There'll be like a hole in a ceiling somewhere. You can just put it up there. And
I've already got permission to store things at my folks' house that need to be safe, so I think that is
fair enough.
The prime object. Just
yeah. So you'll bring Fireball Island, and maybe your parents will start playing with it. Who knows? Probably.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, it could be weirder. So that's the Dark Tower. We really have no details other than the fact that we know it's going to be cooperative and it's going to be done by Restoration Games. I'm really interested to see Rob and, is it Isaac, you said?
Yes.
The Gloomhaven guy working together, because, and this is an epic game, what I'm really interested to see is how they change the tower, because before it was a big battery-operated, clunky thing. They're obviously changing that. So that's going to be really interesting. We'll see how that goes. So next, I want to talk about Keyforge. Keyforge is, Linda, you might actually find this really interesting. Keyforge is by Richard Garfield. He's the dude who made Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
So what it is, and I'm bringing up an article because it actually so it is a card game that is directly targeted, like it is 100% being designed to shoot right at Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone. Like this is the goal of this game is to take everything that people do not like about those games and provide a counter to it for people who still want to play card games with a little bit of randomness to them. So here's how it works. Keyforge is a series of decks. You buy a deck. You don't buy packs. You buy randomized decks. Each one is procedurally generated using the same set of cards. I'm being precise with my language. They are procedurally generated as opposed to randomized. What that means is the decks are designed to work together. They are designed to be playable all on their own. Now, for sake of doing some math, Rob, let me blow your mind on this one. So this is how likely are these decks to be unique because of their procedural generation? Well, I will tell you, the lead designer was interviewed by Polygon, and he stated that Keyforge's procedural generation and the card pool is capable of creating 104 quadrillion different decks. Now,
I don't have that much money.
Well, hold on. You don't have to buy that many. Listen, you knew you weren't paying for this game anyway. You were going to ask him to send you review copies. Come on, Rob. Come on.
Yeah.
They're not going to send you 104 quadrillion decks, though. Now, for those who are really interested in what that means, because I like visualizing things, that means if we lined up every human being currently alive on Earth and put them in a line, like at a store, I could give each person in that line 32 billion decks before they ran out.
Okay, so I can ask them for 32 billion then.
You could, and they might think about it. So, basically what this means is none of the decks will be the same. Now, obviously, some of them will be relatively similar, right? Based on theme and things like that. But since this is a card game, and basically the idea is you can spend your $10, it's like $10 or $11 for a deck. You buy it, you can play it. This will be great for tournaments where you can just buy one and this is your deck. That's what you're playing with. Because it is directly targeted at Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone, I thought that I would reach out to the Infinite co-host. Everybody who listens to the podcast or has listened to us for a long time will remember him. That is my brother. He is our resident card game expert, and I asked him for some hot takes on Keyforge, which, by the way, is coming out later on this year or early next year. So, his hot takes are as follows. Card backs matter, quote unquote. Most collectible card games, the card back, like for example on Magic the Gathering, it is and has always been the same. You should never know any information about the card from the back. That is not the case in Keyforge. The card back actually delivers information to players about what the deck does and what it is. And also it provides you with information playing it. So the and like as we said, he is particularly excited that instead of buying packs and separating the decks and putting them, building custom decks, you simply buy pre-generated decks that are all just as random, or not just as random, but assembled the same way by the machine. What this means is if you buy a handful of those decks, you kind of have your own little, family, tournament set right there. Which means it does add some replayability because, kind of every time you buy a new deck, you're kind of adding to it. Whereas with Magic, you're buying individual cards. Sometimes you're buying a 60-card stack of them, but really the value is in the individual cards. Whereas here, you are buying a set deck, which is but you don't necessarily know what it's going to do, which is kind of interesting. So the goal is that it's supposed to be relatively light. So this is something that you should be able to learn relatively quickly. Like, for example, Linda, I think this might be an interesting way, an interesting experiment to learn card games, just because they all share some of the same mechanics. So we're going to find that out, I'm sure. So basically the way that the decks are constructed is each card is assigned a color, which is very similar to Magic. The color wheel, cards of the same color all tend to do the same kind of things. Like maybe one card type is all about card draw, one might be all about forcing your opponent to discard cards, things like that. All of the decks are 3 colors, 12 cards of each color. So the idea is, the challenge is building a strategy that is not about, each individual card, but it's about playing the cards in the appropriate order, which is very different from, where in a lot of other card games, Hearthstone, Magic, one card could win the day. Not necessarily the case in Keyforge. This is really all about the cards working together and you playing them in the correct order. There's no mana costs, which is interesting. That's kind of very different from Magic and Hearthstone and Pokemon. I'm super excited. I love card games, and I think this is kind of a neat idea. You pay your $12, you get a deck. Everybody has one. You just keep playing. What do you guys think?
I'm so down for this.
I like the art too.
Yeah, this sounds like definitely a good stepping stone for someone that doesn't know card games as well, because it's not deck building. It takes out that whole component.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That immediately makes it less intimidating for me as a not card game player.
Absolutely.
Not collectible card game.
Fun fact, though, for a game that's supposed to be kind of light, quote unquote, this is being published by Fantasy Flight. The good news for that is Fantasy Flight knows how to make a game and they know how to distribute things. So this is not going to be the good news is none of this is going to be rare. I think this is going to be a whole lot of fun. I cannot wait to get my hands on some of these decks, and we will be playing a lot of them. I foresee maybe even losing an entire game day to playing a bunch of these decks. My kids are already hype about it too, so we'll see. So that's Keyforge. Linda, what
Yes.
did you see at Gen Con that got you excited? Because you were our news hound. Like, you really went and did your homework, which I appreciated, because I did not, because I don't do, I've never done homework.
It's the scholar in me. So the thing I think that made me the most excited, which I find funny, is the Horizon Zero Dawn board game that they announced. And I find it funny because I have never played the actual video game, but I watched my husband play lots and lots of it and enjoyed the story just watching it like a movie. So I think of the announcements, I found that one absolutely got me hyped up.
Which is just...
Okay. I know. I'm getting hyped up by the video game.
No, listen, I'm excited about it too. What's funny is, it's funny for 2 reasons. One, I showed the logo. I showed the logo to the general, and she turned she gave it like a significant frown. Like, she's sitting in the other side of the room and frowning at me about this Horizon Zero Dawn game, and Linda is hyped about it. It's just that we live in a weird world, folks. 2018 just basically flipped the script on what reality means. I won't lie, I'm excited about the Horizon Zero Dawn game too. We really don't know many details about it, other than it's set in that world. I'm sure it's going to be an abstraction of the story. Were you able to find any details about it, other than the fact that it has a really cool Ravager fig?
So for John, I showed him a picture and I'm like, what is this monster? It's a scrapper per him. So they had the scrapper, and then there was a female character that I couldn't tell from the details of the figure if it was supposed to be Aloy or if it was supposed to be representing another character.
Okay.
The details of the face were hard to tell, but the fact that it showed miniatures.
Well, yeah.
That's a big detail.
Yeah.
So we don't know much, but they're giving us a sneak peek of miniatures on it.
Yep. Did they say anything about when?
They said a Kickstarter will be coming soon. There was no details beyond that.
Well, that's going to be one of those Kickstarters that's going to go bananas, so we'll just have to pay attention to that one.
And Steamforge is the one that's doing this, and they've brought Dark Souls to board gaming, Resident Evil 2. So, this is not their first rodeo with taking a video game and making it a board game. So that's I'm cautiously optimistic on what
who
they'll
is
do
it?
with it.
Steamforged. And
Steamforged.
What
that's what
they've done?
makes me. They kind of made a name for themselves with Guild Ball.
Oh, they
which
did
is,
Guild Ball. Oh.
Guild Ball is amazing. I love Guild Ball.
Yeah, I like Guild Ball too.
But I've heard mixed reviews leaning towards the negative for Dark Souls. So it worries me a little bit that they're the ones doing it. I mean, they do amazing miniatures. I'm just hoping the gameplay will be up to snuff.
Well, we'll find out. Because one of us will have it, probably, unless the Kickstarter is insane. I mean, the issue is the Kickstarter for Dark Souls was bananas. I wanted it, and because I've wanted a Dark Souls game that I might actually be able to play, because I can't play the other one. So we don't know. I mean, this one might be priced out for us, Linda, just by nature of the fact that it's kind of expensive. Their other stuff is kind of expensive, but Guild Ball is only expensive if you buy like literally everything. So it's pretty reasonable. So here's hoping.
It depends. I mean, miniatures that can really blow up the price. It just depends on how they want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's definitely one to watch, though.
Absolutely. So Rob, what's the thing that's got you the most hype?
Well, I'm really down with Power Rangers, and I mean Renegade is doing it, so I've got hopes it's going to be good. It's based off the original Mighty Morphin, 1 to 5 players, and the miniatures are going to be like oversized miniatures.
Yes.
And I'm most, they've showed us I think a couple of the minis. I don't think we've seen any Zords yet or Megazords.
Oh, but that's a thing.
But really, all I care about, and I am a grown man. I grew up with Power Rangers, but like, dude, I need myself a Green Ranger expansion, and I am 100% in. Like, my kids all love Power Rangers, especially my 4-year-old. This is a game that's gonna have to hit my table no matter what.
And they're predicting this year, by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Kickstarter's in 1 week.
That might be something that ends up under the Christmas tree.
All right. So, like, while you were talking about the Power Rangers thing, I was just literally hulking out, like, over here, just like I almost ripped off my T-shirt, but nobody needs to see that. Like, this is one of those things. I have always loved giant robots. Always loved giant robots. And, between Voltron, Transformers, and then Power Rangers hit when I was 13. So I was a little bit too old for Power Rangers. But, as anyone who knows me knows, being too old for something has never stopped me. And so I got into it, at least the first season, really just because I liked giant robots. Like, this show is obviously really dumb. I mean, it's really dumb. The stories are always really dumb and overwrought and overacted, but they're doing what they can. And ever since then, I have made a point to watch like one episode of every Power Ranger show that they've had, just because I'm super interested in, like basically the giant robots. And so, and now I kind of understand more about how they make the show and all that. The game, I saw the miniatures; they look amazing. I don't even know. This game could be super terrible, and I still think I want it.
All right, so let's just get something out in the open here.
Yeah.
The last time you were at my house to play games,
I literally got up and picked up one of your children's Power Rangers toys and started playing with it.
Yes, and you took a picture with it. It was like the 3-foot-tall Play School Megazord or something.
You're damn right I did. And anyone that wants to talk about that, just come at me.
I play with his Dragonzord because it's got a remote that is the flute dagger, and it plays the Dragonzord music when it moves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, listen. I love Power Rangers. It's so stupid. They're so dumb, but I love every minute of it. And now that I understand, like, here's what's real interesting, Linda. Now because the actual Power Rangers, like that they make in Japan, are for grown-ups. It is not children's programming. Not like in that way, but like it's meant as like, it's like CW stuff. So you can buy them all on Blu-ray and like see what the actual story is. I'm gonna do this with my kids eventually. Like hey, let's watch Power Rangers. And although before that they have to get all caught up on Dragon Ball Z now, because now that they watched Evo, and watched Dragon Ball Fighters, now they want to watch all of Dragon Ball, and that's going to take like 4 years. So maybe I've got some time. So I want to talk about the thing that I thought that got me the most hyped, because other than Power Rangers, which like when I saw that I lost my damn mind. I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons for a minute. Wizards of the Coast, this was announced a little bit ahead of Gen Con, but Gen Con is really like it's coming out. Dungeons and Dragons is crossing over with Magic the Gathering with an official like hardback source book. And that's freaking ridiculous. I don't know why it didn't happen already, but I'm excited. It's a Ravnica, campaign setting. Ravnica being it's the city of guilds, quote unquote. This is a big one of the most popular Magic the Gathering like worlds in its 25-year history. The setting is really neat because there's this set of, I think there are 12 or 10 guilds. I think it's 10. Don't hate me if I get it wrong. But there's 10 guilds, and it's all about politics and everybody going after each other, and all of these guilds have very different goals. And not only do they have very different goals, but they have very different methods of achieving those goals. And part of that is because those guilds are all represented by combinations of the colors in Magic. So obviously the different colors in Magic do very different things, and thus combining them in different ways creates different attitudes and philosophies, which I think is super fascinating. The idea of being able to play a character that is a part of these different guilds is... that's a really cool idea. They've been doing free supplements, just printing out like little, sending out like 20 little page free PDFs, 20-page little PDFs is what I wanted to say, on their website since Kaladesh, when they went to it was in India basically. So, and that's been fun. And I thought that was just going to continue, and all of a sudden I saw a hardback book, and I was like, there's no way that this is real, and now it is. I am 100% picking this up, and if they're making a source book, that means I would presume that they're going to make like real adventures, and that sounds awesome to me. This is a crossover that should have happened years ago, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if either of you guys have thoughts or opinions on that.
Now, Ravnica is my favorite Magic the Gathering setting. It's actually the one that got me back into Magic after so many years, so I started playing with my oldest son with Return to Ravnica. And I love the idea of this planet where the entire surface of the planet is covered by this one sprawling city with these guilds. And I just think it fits D&D so well, and it's almost kind of reminiscent of the of Planescape, where you had the City of Doors. I can't wait, and I've already got in touch with my Wizards rep, and I will be getting a copy in the fall when it comes out, and I am super excited.
That's pretty awesome. So, Linda, does any of this do anything for you?
It makes me want to learn the story. I don't know enough to be excited about it yet.
Honestly, the way you say the fact that you said that, right, like it makes you kind of interested in the story. Like there is an entire like genre of people. There's like a group of people that just read Dungeons and Dragons books because they're interested in the background. You sound like the kind of person that would be super down with that. I will loan you my copy of this book because the story is super interesting. Because all the different they're not clans, all the different guilds, like some of them like hate each other, some of them are allies, some of them are allies because they have to be. They all have these really interesting and charismatic leaders who like represent the guilds. And seeing them like in a Dungeons and Dragons world, and seeing Dungeons and Dragons supplemental products like the miniatures and dice and play mats and all this stuff, super rad. I think it's a cool. There's a lot of cool crossover here, and the art, just the cover of the book, just looks so rad. So that's Ravnica. Interesting factoid. So they're making a Magic the Gathering book. This Magic the Gathering cross Dungeons and Dragons. But they're bringing back the Eberron setting, which is one of their one of their large number of campaign settings in the Dungeons and Dragons world. This one is interesting because it was actually created by a fan as part of a contest. And it's being released digital only for the first time. Rob, I know this makes you feel a certain kind of way.
Right. It's cool to have the digital and whatever, but I like a physical book when playing D&D, something I can flip through easily. I love the look, the feel, the smell, and like I'm all for, like, I love my Kindle and stuff like that. But when it comes to something like D&D, I want a physical book. I want this on my shelf.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. I don't know what their decision-making process... Like, I don't know how they decided that Eberron needed the digital only. But, maybe we'll never find out. But it's kind of interesting. But it's out there. It's a thing. So if you were really attached to that Eberron setting, this is a time to, kind of go ahead and grab that. I think it's on is it the DM Guild?
Yep, Dungeon Masters Guild. It's $19.99 for the PDF. And I forget how many pages. I think it's 175 pages.
Which is pretty intense.
It's pretty intense. And the cool thing about, Eberron is an interesting setting because it is very magic heavy. And it's, I don't want to call it like a film noir type setting. It's like a magic noir type setting where you have these characters that really blur the line between good and evil, and it's not really like the big magic, like your resurrection and your fireball spells, but it's really like low magic is very common. And I think one of the new classes is the Artificer, which is a character that just makes magic items. Like, this is just an everyday thing in the world of Eberron. Like, I really want it. I really don't want to read it on a screen.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I don't like Dungeons and Dragons books on my Kindle either. So this is one of those things that we'll just have to see how it goes. There are some people that swear by it, but yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one until I can get an actual book. But I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that it's gonna make some people happy, just not me. Can we talk about Dude for a minute?
Dude.
This game was made for you.
It is. So what's funny story, all of my actual nieces and nephews refer to me as Uncle Dude, and my friends' children call me Uncle Dude. It was largely by accident. I don't know who first called me Uncle Dude. Was it Isaac?
Yes, Isaac started the trend.
So
my now 10-year-old, it's official.
I can't believe he's 10. Oh my god. Jake will be 10 in the fall. It's freaking me out. Because I just say dude to everybody. Like, all the kids, I say dude whenever I see them, and Isaac just called me Uncle Dude, and we all laughed about it, and then we all were like, I think this has to be a thing. So now I'm Uncle Dude. And so then all of a sudden, North Star Games rolls out and releases Dude, which is very clearly a Big Lebowski thing. And you know what? I'm more than okay with it. It's a game about just a bunch of different ways to say dude, basically. I have no idea how it plays. I don't know. How about this? I really don't think I care. Like, is it okay that I don't care? I just want it anyway?
I think that's perfectly
I think it's perfectly fine.
Fair.
Do you want to hear what the description of the game is on Target?
Can you do that?
I have it in front of me. Yes. So per the Target blurb, it is a game including 72 cards. The word dude appears on each card in one of 6 different ways. The goal is to quickly find matches for as many cards as you can. To play, you say the word dude as you think it should be said based on how it appears on your card. At the same time, listen to how other players are saying the word dude, trying to figure out if you have the same card as another player. And that's the essence of the game. And it says it plays in 5 minutes. So
That
a silly party game.
I'm down.
Yeah.
I mean, I really am. I'm gonna have to get it eventually. This is one of those things. And then we're gonna have to play it. I think we might have to play it in podcast form. Just because it's gonna be a whole lot of dude. I'm sure the man behind the curtain will love to edit that one out. That sounds like that'll be pretty great. So how much is it at Target?
It is.
Probably like
Hold on,
$20, right?
Oh, it's $11.
$11? Oh man.
It is $11.
Okay, so that's not too bad. So
That's not bad. And there's actually already a more dude card game.
Oh yeah, there's
also for $11.
Yeah,
$10.99 to be.
So that's what I remember the pricing. It was $20 because
For both.
it was going to be 20 for both of them. But really, I think we probably could get away with just regular dude. I don't know. We'll have to find out, right?
Yes.
How can I say no to a $10 board game about dude? So a little bit of cleanup. Some of the stuff that we so Expand City, which is a game that Rob has played and reviewed, sold out like crazy, and for about an hour during Gen Con, it was the top of the hotness list at on Board Game Geek. Rob, tell us about Expand City, because you not only unboxed it, but you played it.
Yes. So Expand City is a game about building cities. So you've got these city blocks that can kind of snap together to build skyscrapers. And you've got tiles in a bag. And the basics of it, and there's a few goals here and there, but the basics of it is to score the most points with your residential and commercial buildings. Residential buildings can only be built on residential tiles. Commercial buildings can only be built on commercial tiles. You get bonuses for groups, like clusters that are close together. And you also get bonuses if you have landmarks like a park, a bar, a police station. They might say, like, this bumps up the value of a residential or commercial property, or it bumps the value down. You also get negatives if you complete a building that has an empty lot next to it. And there's also this mechanic where you can only build so tall. So a residence can only be 1 to 3 tall, and you can't build one that's too tall until you've already proven you can build one that's 1 tall. And you can't build one that's 3 tall until you've proven you can build one 2 tall. And then commercial buildings, I believe, have to be 4 or larger with similar rules. So you can't start off by building an 8-high tower. You have to start off with a 4, then a 5, then a 6. And those are just the very, very simple, basic rules of it. But it's great to play with kids because, you can do the basic building. They like stacking them up and creating their buildings, and it's kind of that very easy level. But then playing with adults, with your kind of like gamer buddies or whatnot, you get into this whole, the modifiers, and really it's less about trying to bump up your own score and more about really trying to screw everyone over by making sure there's empty lots next to their buildings or these landmarks that'll drive down the value of their property.
Yep. I have a copy of it on the way to me from Breaking Games, so I'm looking forward to playing it. This is, it's kind of like it feels, or I can't say it feels because I haven't actually touched it yet, but it looks like it's supposed to feel a little SimCity-ish. Is that, am I just projecting too much on the buildings, or what's up?
I think it's more the visual of the buildings. Because it's not like you're building, airports or any kind of infrastructure. It's really just these commercial and residential properties and trying to get your score multipliers. But the production value is super, super high, and the box art kind of gives you that SimCity feel. But what it really comes down to playing is it's fairly basic in how the mechanics work, and it's more just how the pieces mesh together and how you build your buildings and complete your goals and kind of screw over everybody else with these negative modifiers.
Interesting. Yeah, you know what? This is going to sound crazy, and Linda, tell me I'm stupid. For whatever reason, all the time that I spent watching this game like kind of unfold and seeing all, I never really thought about there being more than one player.
I think I know why.
Why?
when I first was looking at the components, it reminds me of the Think Fun single-player games, the Laser Maze and Marble Maze and the roller coaster, all from Think Fun. The pieces, they have a similar feel or look to them, I should say. So I think that might be what it's reminding you of. Because when I pulled up the pictures of the components, that was the very first thing I thought of. It reminds me of the Think Fun games.
Yeah, okay, so that you're right. Now that I think about that, you're probably right. That is the reason. With that said, man, it never even occurred, like, when Rob mentioned the idea of, you can place things in certain ways and kind of screw over other players, like, my brain had to jar into, oh, wait, this isn't a single-player game.
Not a single player, right?
Listen, I can't wait. I love tile laying games. I love the theme. So I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun, and it is on the way. So folks that are listening, you can expect a unboxing video on our Facebook page, probably during a Facebook Live, and plenty of pictures on our Instagram. The only other thing that was of note, and I think this was more, I was not super excited by it, but I was more interested in it, is Machikoro Legacy. Rob, this made you feel a certain kind of way also.
Oh, I like Machikoro. It's a really kind of light, fun game.
Yeah.
I have no interest in a Legacy version of it, and I could be completely wrong, and it most likely will end up being amazing. It didn't excite me. Like when I saw the news, everybody was like, "Oh my God, here it comes!" I was just like, okay.
All right. Yeah. I'm kind of with you. Linda, what did you think when you saw the Machikoro Legacy? I thought it was a joke.
I was surprised to see that. I haven't played Machikoro yet. I recently acquired the Bright Lights Big City version, and that is still in the box, shrink-wrapped and waiting.
It's pretty much the same thing. I think it's got it's got some extra cards. Right, Rob? It's pretty much the same game as the original, just with some extra stuff.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I've only ever played the original, and I actually don't own it. I've played it at a friend's house.
It is a big favorite of the boys, especially when the daycare was open. Machikoro was out almost always.
So it intrigues me that they're turning that into a Legacy game, and that Rob Davio's doing another Legacy game. Like, this is definitely his specialty, creating these Legacy games. So, the only real details I saw besides the fact that he's part of the team is that apparently there's 10 missions, a 10-mission campaign in this to complete.
Well, that's what Legacy games are, right? Like, the idea is it's a game that over time I don't know, man. I think this is one of those ones I'm going to have to see how it plays out. But I've never seen a game, thought it was a joke, then immediately knew that it wasn't a joke, and then kind of wished it was a joke, but then was glad that it wasn't a joke. I'm getting... I know that I am the living embodiment of hype, right? And so, swings of emotion, not a big surprise for me. But this one made me feel like, in rapid succession, a whole bunch of different stuff. And it could be because maybe I just needed more caffeine at that point. But I think that's kind of where we are.
Now, I'll be honest. When I first saw the word Legacy, it took a few minutes to realize what that was implying, because I would not have thought of this style game becoming a Legacy game. It just didn't. There's a dissonance to that idea.
Now, they are saying that this isn't it's not a Legacy game where you play your 10 games and it's done. It's just you play your 10 games and then it's done with the Legacy aspect, and then it can just be played over and over again as a regular game. It's not like it's done and then it's useless. So maybe it's got that going for it.
Which makes it more family friendly. It's not a one playthrough and then done.
Yeah, it's not like you have to buy a recharge pack to restart it or anything. It's just, it's in its final state, and it is a completely playable game after that point.
Which I think is interesting. The ability to, it's basically like building your own board game, is what it sounds like. Funny story about being like, oh, I didn't think this game really lended itself to being a legacy game. The fun story is neither did Rob Daviau. They actually asked him twice, and he turned them down twice because he just didn't know how to do it. But the thing with creative types, especially him, is if he really does not like being able to say he can't figure it out. Because as soon as he does that, every time he's in the shower, every time he's driving, like that gear is going to turn, and eventually he found it and then reached out to them to say, hey, I think I'm ready, which I think is fascinating. I'm going to have him on the show at some point very soon. I already reached out to him because I really want to see kind of what his thought process was on that, because I'm really interested in that. And obviously he's got a whole lot of stuff to talk about, being that he is responsible for a genre of board game. I think it'll be interesting to have a chance to talk to him. So, I think, guys, that's pretty much it from Gen Con. What did you think? Do you guys think it was a good show? Do you think, are we more excited about board games in general than we were before Gen Con started? The same? What do you think?
I'm pretty much the same. If I was able to go to Gen Con, maybe that would be a little different. But it was cool seeing. I always love to see people I know and them posting their pictures and having a good time. And I love to hear, like buddies like Alex, just their games like Expansity just selling out like crazy. So yeah, it's cool, to see that and get a little bit excited. But I think it's hard for a lot of that excitement to really, really hit home unless I was there.
Yeah, you're probably right. Linda and I have talked about this, that we do really want to go. It's a matter of maybe now, who knows? Maybe in a post E3 world, maybe Gen Con will be in the cards, because I would really like to hit this one up. So, folks, I think we're running out of time today. We've done a whole lot of talking about Gen Con, but I know we missed some stuff. We cut some things for time, and also it's just the three of us and we weren't there. So if you saw something, why don't you head on over to our Facebook community. That is at facebook.com. No, it is engagefamilygaming.com/community. That's where you really want to go. Join the community. Share with us your experiences, your hype moments from Gen Con, because we'd like to hear about it, because maybe there's something that's really great for the kids. Who knows? So until next time, this is Steven and Linda and Rob. We hope that you have a great day. And also, we want to remind you, do not forget to get your family game on. We'll see you next week for video games, where we're going to talk a whole lot about World of Warcraft and EVO. Have a good night. Bye.
Later.
Bye.